And grey skies here in Hamilton, and the rain continues to come down intermittently. The question is, how heavy will it be at the start of this race? 200 kilometres, we can drop one off that started list there of 28 because we know that Paul Dumbrell will not start. More on that in just a second. 59 laps around this 3.4 kilometre circuit. The fourth year we've been coming here to Hamilton on the North Island in New Zealand, and the weather has come to play today. It's already mixed up qualifying and the top 10 shootout. This is our circuit, street circuit, all the bumps and bruises and manholes and mayhem that goes with it.
Pretty much summarised it then, Matthew. There's nowhere to go off the back of that. It's 3.4 kilometres, it's 8 turns, and it's any man's guess as to how this is going to pan out when you consider the variation in the conditions, and that's going to be the big talking point. Our understanding at this point is that everybody is on a dry tyre, but with the rain misting down at the moment, if it gets much heavier, they'll have to think about getting onto the Dunlop wet.
Fuso grid, Whincup and Stevie Johnson on the front row of the grid. That's Stevie's best start in 2 years. Rick Kelly, congratulations to Rick, and Alicia are now engaged. Shane Van Gisbergen on the second row, 9 podiums in his career. Can this be the day for the Giz? There's Craig Lowndes and Garth Tander, a wealth of experience on row 3. David Reynolds, the Stratco racer, has had his troubles, but comes here now with his best ever qualifier for a race. He'll start alongside Murph, Tony D'Alberto and Dean Fiore. This is Tony's 99th career V8 supercar race, and this is Mark Winterbottom's 100th career supercar event. James Moffat will start alongside him in his Hamilton debut. Pole position in Adelaide for Will Davison, and a race win on the streets of Sydney for Jonathan Webb. So different kinds of form guide there. Fabian Coulthard is the leading Kiwi in the championship. We can always expect something great from Russell Ingall. Warren Luff will have a vacant box next to him on the grid because Paul Dumbrell's car is bashed up and in the garage, hoping to be fixed for tomorrow. Todd Kelly and Jason Bright fill in positions 19 and 20. Steve Owen is back in his regular car after a big one at Adelaide. James Courtney, 287 points behind our championship leader, will start from 22nd. Carl Reindler and Michael Caruso fill out the other spots. The new sponsor, as we've mentioned, for Jason Bargwanna, Jana Living Racing and Tim Slade. Car 47 has only finished one race in 4 attempts here, and if you're a betting man, you'd come into this weekend having a look at guys like Lee Holdsworth and Alex Davison. Alex Davison 4th in the championship, and Lee Holdsworth always a good bet on a street circuit and in the rain. But they will start from the last row of the grid.
Now, as I look out the window here, I can see bit wet, bit dry. Now, this is going to get hard. Remember, teams have got 12 only new wet tyres they can use this weekend. OK, here's our wet tyre, about 300mm wide. It's very similar in its compound and construction to the dry tyre, except it's got these grooves. And as you can see, they're quite wide to pump the water out. Now, if the line starts to dry on the track, which I think it will, what's going to be critical? If you come in close, Dave, let's have a look. See the edges of these grooves? That is razor sharp, front edge and around here. So you can see the V's like this. So what's going to happen is it's going to cut through the water and channel it through here. Now, as it dries out, what happens is these edges, these sharp edges, feather. They start to roll a little bit, and the water doesn't cut through the water as well. So it's going to be critical how you manage these tyres, not so much in the wet, but how you manage your wet tyres in the dry.
Yeah, thanks very much, Larko. Thanks to Home Hardware, the proper racing line from Mark Larkham. Issues are plenty to talk about.
And the trick there is that as we go on board the VIP car of Steve Owen, which is back in the original car that was damaged at the Clipsal 500 at turn 8. Steve had to use his spare car in the non-championship event. Here's Russell Ingall for Super Cheap Auto Racing. Yeah, so the point there is that you've got a long race today, 200 kilometres. You've got to do it again tomorrow. They're talking about showers for tomorrow. So with just that number of tyres, and this is what Mark and I were talking about at the top of the show, you probably have to consider feeding tyres on 2 at a time rather than 4 at a time. Clearly, you always want to get the best possible grip outcome that you can possibly achieve, but you're going to have in the back of your mind when you do that today and tomorrow, we've got to find a way to the end of the weekend.
Exactly, and the story unfolds now that every car comes up to the line on slick tyres, and as you saw, it's raining. The wipers are on, and you've got to start from the outside. So Jamie Whincup is on position 1, but he's on the outside of the road for the first corner.
Scafey, if I can just jump in there, mate. Yeah, there's a couple of guys trying to get their wets on right at the death, and they couldn't quite do it. But now, I can tell you, there is 10 sets of wets out on the pit lane here, and one of the, that looks like, is it Jason Bright coming in? Yeah, and they'll have to start from pit lane, but could be a shrewd move.
Just a reminder, if you need to leave us, take your Telstra NextG mobile with you and you'll catch Sevens coverage, thanks to Big Pond Sport.
The reason that Brad's done that down at BOC is that Bright had a poorish qualifying by his standard. He was down in 20th position. So when you're down there, why not take the risk now, putting the other tyres on?
This is going to be on for young and old down here at turn 1. We already know how slippery it is. They're all on slick tyres.
So the 5th race of 2011. Jamie Whincup starts from a familiar position at the front. But this will definitely be a case of anything goes. Rick Kelly darts across to the other side of the track. They're going to go 3 wide down to turn 1. Stephen Johnson in the middle. Whincup goes wide. Van Gisbergen's in the crunch as well.
Rick's grabbed this.
Brilliant move from Rick Kelly. Now down to turn 2. The water's already on the windscreen. So Kelly leads Johnson. Tander. There's Van Gisbergen. Whincup is playing it safe. He's dropped 4 spots from the start.
Yeah, that'd be unintentional. He's dropped back into an awkward spot there, Whincup. So he's lost a lot of ground in the first half of this lap. Kelly, a beautiful opportunistic move to jump, trade sides on the road and get himself in position down at turn 1.
So great start, Rick Kelly and Steve Johnson, and also Garth Tander. He's popped up to 3rd spot. Shane Van Gisbergen in 4th. Whincup and Lowndes make up your top 5. So as the train runs through this chicane in the back straight, Rick Kelly, great start.
Well, it's a very calculated move. Some damage on the front of James Moffat's car. You're right, I reckon it was a double crunch for Jamie Whincup. First of all, he was outsmarted, and then he decided, I'm just going to sit back here. So I thought I saw some fluid popping out of the side of Garth Tander's car at the rear right.
I think they have, on a couple of occasions this weekend, we've seen them venting water.
That will no doubt turn out to be a side mirror depository throughout the course of the day.
Jamie Whincup also locked the front right brake pretty solidly going into turn 6. This is Murphy on Reynolds for position. The team cars, he moves into 7th now, and Will Davison running with him. 1.7 seconds the gap between Rick Kelly and Stephen Johnson. That's a beautiful opening lap to give himself a cushion.
No doubt, Neil, and you're the pioneer. The really impressive thing about the Rick Kelly lap is you're the first guy arriving at these places that are wet and dry. The level of dampness changes around the whole of this circuit, and he's on slick tyres, so he's done a really good job.
Prime Minister John Key looking firmly ahead in the SBR garage. The best performing Kiwi is his man Shane Van Gisbergen, but Greg Murphy's already been on a charge. Murph up to 7th.
Tander looking very impatient back at turn 3. He tried to jump out from underneath the back of the Jim Beam car as we go on board Jamie at the start. Watch everybody down the inside here. It wasn't a bad start from Jamie, but he just ended up being on the wrong side of all the traffic down here. So Johnson holds him up high. That gave enough space for Rick to get through it. And because of the tardy exit down at turn 1, then Garth goes as well. But he's also on the wrong side of the road when they get to turn 2. So this is the reason he got squeezed back. There's Van Gisbergen. So really being on the outside, oddly enough, for what was the revised pole position here, probably didn't serve him that well.
Exactly, that was my point as they come up to the line. When you're on position 1, you're on the outside, and this is on for young and old now. It's Tander and Johnson bumping in the braking area for turn 1, and Van Gisbergen will jump around the inside. He'll be up the inside for turn 2 on Tander. 3
little touches between Johnson and Tander, and it didn't take long for Van Gisbergen to accept an invitation that wasn't really given. So Van Gisbergen trying to poke his nose up into 3rd position, and he gets it done at turn 2.
And he looks racy, doesn't he? He's got lap speed at the moment.
I think Garth thought he was going to round Stephen up on the outside under brakes at 1, and he will have known almost instantly once they got down towards 1 and he was hung up high, that was always going to have a price tag. Look at the margin that Rick's got. It's at 4 seconds now.
Unbelievable.
Now, that's a real frustration for Tander because he had pace over Stephen on this very previous lap in the same spot, but he's not been able to capitalise. Now he's got to deal with a clearly fired up Shane Van Gisbergen at the moment.
This race hasn't settled down yet. We're still in this crazy stage. Rick Kelly's making the most of it. 4.3 seconds further up the road. Johnson's now got a mirror full of Van Gisbergen. Tander wants to get that spot back. Windcup's there with all of his pace. Look at this rubbing along the front straight here between Tander and Johnson.
And right here is where Garth knows he's cooked, and Van Gisbergen was able to make advantage. And I think also about being on the wet tyre for Jason Bright at the moment. That'll be hurting him.
Well, it will, because Rick Kelly's just on a 1:29, so it's effectively 6 seconds slower as Van Gisbergen gets down the inside of Johnson, and Tander tags the right rear of Johnson, and so does Windcup come into this game.
And Windcup got a better exit then, and because Tander had contact, it slowed him up on the corner exit speed for one. He's a bit vulnerable down here, but remember, it's still not pristine grip out there, so if you're super aggressive under brakes at the moment, you could well pay a price.
So Van Gisbergen goes up into second. Johnson slots back to third. There's Tander. Here they come in the exit of 3. Then Windcup, then Lowndes. Murphy's behind them. Will Davison, Mark Winterbottom, and David Reynolds make up our top 10. Rick Kelly's the leader by 4.3 seconds. Now he's got the 21-year-old Kiwi chasing him down.
And Van Gisbergen's been released to the extent that he's done the fastest first sector split. So with fresh air, that'll serve him pretty well at the moment. Remember, we're in new turf when it comes to tyre longevity as well. One of the things about practice, particularly for those in the top half of the championship, the top 14, is you get very little genuine work time to try different cause and effect with your car setup. There's a replay here of Tim Slade getting all out of shape, and that was at Holdsworth, down at turn 3. So that was a bit lucky for Slade that he didn't end up in the wall there. But pioneers in terms of understanding just exactly how long the softer tyres will last on this racetrack. Watching Tander here at 1, and he now puts a move on Stephen Johnson.
So our co-tire leaderboard has Rick Kelly 4.5 seconds clear of Shane Van Gisbergen. Garth Tander's third, then Windcup, then Lowndes. There's Stephen Johnson. Greg Murphy's tucked in behind Junior, and Mark Winterbottom is there behind Greg Murphy.
So a big charge from both the Team Vodafone guys now. Both Windcup and Lowndes have been marching forwards. They've displaced Stephen Johnson. Kelly and Van Gisbergen are trading fastest laps at the moment, but they're hovering in the mid-24, so it's pretty quick. It's basically about as quick as we've seen all weekend in race mode, let alone with damp edges on the racetrack. So being out there on the wet tyre for Jason Bright would have been a disaster in these early laps. But Johnson now drifting a little. Both the Vodafone guys moving up, and Tander now having been released from the two Vodafone cars. He's trying to margin down that gap to Van Gisbergen.
And the way that they've got away with this start, being on the slick tyre, is that they are on the soft compound tyre. We've made reference to it already. And when the circuit is in this sort of format where you've got basically a damp line, and as you can see, even offline at the moment, it remains damp. The only reason you can stay on the black stuff and make sure that you maintain control of the car is to have reasonable tyre grip, and the soft tyre has worked very well at the start of this race.
Given the patchy wet fringes around the racetrack and the typically frantic start to the race here, and here's the move of Whincup on Johnson. This was done down at turn 2. And this is now Lowndes doing the same thing to Stephen Johnson. So this was a couple of laps back. Greg Murphy next in the queue. So wet fringes, street circuit, high probability based on history of safety car intervention. Got to say that the first 7.5 laps of this race actually been pretty clean, guys.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned Jason Bright. Well, he's just crossed the line. By virtue of being on the wets, he's 3.5 seconds a lap slower than pretty much the rest of the field.
And killing them in the same process.
And Mark Winterbottom, who has just done the fastest lap of the race at 1:24.09, is currently in 8th position. So it looks like Whincup's got speed on Tander, so he's just moved up onto the back of Tander as Michael Caruso is in pit lane. And Whincup's done the fastest first sector of the race, so we're just saying about him being pretty speedy, and no doubt he's got to the point where he will put some pressure on Garth Tander. Rick Kelly is also showing good speed, still with a healthy gap of 4.5 seconds over local hero Shane Van Gisbergen. And here's Mark Winterbottom putting pressure on Greg Murphy. So Murphy he'll have his elbows out, and he'll want to make sure that he does the best job possible in these early laps. He was right behind Steve Johnson before. Did you just see how much road they use everywhere? No room for error at all around this circuit, especially coming onto the straight there.
Craig Lowndes has just done the fastest lap of the race, a 1:23 now, 0.8. Only 2 drivers gone in the 1:23s, both from Team Vodafone.
Have a look at the time, Matt. A 1:23.81 and a 1:23.82 for Lowndes and Whincup. Absolutely nothing in it.
Well, remember a few years ago, Mark Winterbottom got pole position off Jamie Whincup by 7/10,000ths of a second. So this circuit can throw up all sorts of numbers at you, but right now the number that Winterbottom wants to get is position 7. He wants to take that spot from Greg Murphy and then start charging further up towards Stephen Johnson, because lap by lap, oh, here he goes. So Winterbottom is waiting for that moment.
Very good pass.
At turn 5, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah, very rarely seen moves down there. Wide of the line.
Oh, big moment for Todd Kelly. That was really wide.
And that shows you just how good a pass it was from Mark Winterbottom, because all sorts of chaos can happen if you go into turn 5 too hot.
On board now with Whincup right behind Tander. And he's got a run on him. He got a really nice exit. So let's just have a look down here at the braking area as they pull 6th gear. This is a 250km/h end to this lap, and Garth just giving a little move over, and he also knows that to get down the inside, to be able to get Garth Tander, you had to go onto the wet line. So Garth used that. He drove the car right to the edge of the dry line. And here, again, that's the wet line there that Jamie's not game to go on to.
Now, this is the re-ignition of the battle they were having at the Clipsal. They spoke about it at the top of our telecast. And there was a tit-for-tat trade of paint exchange there. And they're very close to doing the same again now.
And on the strict rules of this is this Todd Kelly moment. Have a look. Up and over the curb, right out sideways. Lucky to get away with that one.
The rejoin was as scary as the off.
And that's Rick Kelly going, oh, gee, he hit those tyres hard. And then the second or the third curb in that chicane, he also hit that hard as a consequence. So Garth Tander, in the strictest sense of the rules, is not blocking, but he's blocking to the edge of the dry line, which makes it very hard for Whincup, even with better lap speed.
Remember in Adelaide, we saw Garth very, very strong at the beginning of his tyre run, and then it took a few laps for things to normalise for Whincup, and then he attacked. We're seeing it again today.
When you get a chance, great driving.
So Tander and Whincup had speed at different phases of the Clipsal 500. Same thing's occurring here. But Jamie's looking, I think he's got a bit of extra pace that he's unable to use right at the moment. It's interesting also that Caruso's been the only one that's jumped out of everybody else's current strategy sequence to do a run from here on in that basically splits the load across the tyres. So he's done his one fuel stop and he can grab some more again a little bit further down the road and then get home potentially.
James Courtney comes in.
Well, just as I say it, they've gone for it in the number one car as well.
His teammate, meanwhile, continues this fight to hold off Whincup, who was fastest 4 out of the last 5 laps. If anyone knows that the importance of keeping Whincup behind you, it's got to be Garth Tander.
And Whincup will be frustrated now, Matt, because he's definitely got lap speed.
Well, that's what Garth wants, isn't it?
Well,
he wants him to be frustrated.
Well, he probably does, but as I said, he was, to the strictest sense of the law, not doing anything wrong. But he's held him right to the edge of the dry line, makes it very hard for Jamie Whincup.
I need to remind you, game mate, how slippery this concrete is. Hit neutral in the box, please. Rears are done. We're clear here in pit lane. Fuel's done. Front's done. You're good to go. Good to go. Remember the blend line, mate. You're on cold front as well. We've just had enough time to do front, so just be a bit greasy the first couple of laps. You're at the fastest car out there the last few laps, so just keep pushing on. We'll get some good spots here, force everyone else to stop. All right. 4 cold tyres, buddy, 4 cold tyres. Nice. Josh, you're going to have to reach for this front wheel when you get it, mate. They're on, mate. Rear tyres are on. Go, mate, go.
This is Lowndes earlier. Rear's done and front's done, and he's been sent back out.
The other thing that's got to be very carefully managed here is how slippery it is on the concrete when it's wet. And it's getting wet again.
Pit lane looks good. Fronts are done. Waiting on fuel. Good to go. Good to go.
So they did a couple of things there.
Line, mate. Blend line.
They removed Craig Lowndes from that battle group that he couldn't really penetrate, and then they removed Jamie Whincup from the battle that he was having with Garth Tander that was starting to cost him time. So good move by Team Vodafone tactically.
Matty, the buzz in pit lane at the moment is that it is raining on the backside of the circuit. So all the teams now are pushing their wets to the front, and it has started just drizzling in pit lane. Be interesting to see what happens from here.
Well, those that are just sitting and waiting at the moment could be well served by this. So take, for example, let's think about someone up at the top of the field like Whincup. He's just come in and put another set of cold, slick tyres on and
he's almost headbutted the wall.
Oh, he has. He actually did headbutt the wall. Now, that's disastrous. So that's actually making the point about cold tyres and a wet track. If you wait for a couple of laps to see which way it's going to go now, there will be those that have stayed out there who might just make the one move onto wets, which puts them a stop up. Now, has he got away with that without...
That's...
No.
It's very, very slippery. We've already said that in pit lane. And very, very hard to stop the car.
Okay, mate, got to get these tyres up as quick as you can. Watch your back.
And a mistake there with Shane Van Gisbergen.
This has ruined his race. So as Dave Lovell was our cameraman there, he's okay. We held our breath for a moment. He's back on the job. There he is at the front of the car.
Well done, Dave.
You've got to try harder than that to get him down. Thanks, Dave. So Shane Van Gisbergen, they're massively overshooting, and that underscores what I said a moment ago about how slippery the lane is when it's wet on the concrete.
Yeah, Neil, the issue in pit lane is that the pull-up area is completely concrete, so with a bit of oil and muck down and being wet and damp, it's just like ice. A couple of times we've seen the guys come in and they've skidded for at least a metre or two before they actually pull up, so it's a real problem here in pit lane right now.
Well, Whincup's gone straight into the garage, Barretts. Thanks for that. You're dead right. It's as slippery as you can get down there, and some critical things have happened here.
Yep, let's go up, let's go up, let's go up. Get stands under, please, stands under, please.
Shane Van Gisbergen's lost a lot of time. Whincup's now in the garage. Rick Kelly could then put a bit of a buffer out at front. So it's all falling perfectly for Rick Kelly. If he manages and his team manages to do this properly, this should pay dividends. Good job from Kelly Racing. Wow, this race has changed in the blink of a couple of headbutts in pit lane. One against the wall from Whincup and one against, unfortunately, our cameraman from Van Gisbergen. I've seen a few guys come in. It looks as though another car coming in there.
That's Russell Ingall's car. And we saw at the back of the shot off turn 4 chicane. There's the moment for Whincup. That hit hard. So as you can see, the damage to the left front, and we'll just show you again here. He just mounts the outside concrete block. Have a look right into the BOC sign. Bang!
Shift the block, yeah. So that's cold, slick tyres, a little bit of damp on the road. 1.5 tons of Holden Commodore meets the concrete block, I should say, and it's game over. So there'll be steering arm damage on that. That's a terrible shame, and he'll be really angry with himself about that. It's very easily done, but massively frustrating.
And sorry, I thought that was Russell Ingall with the damage. There was a massive leap off the curb at the end of turn 4, and I thought that it had hurt the rear sway bar, but it was Warren Luff coming in to have a look at that car. So we'll find out for you what's gone on there with Warren Luff's Commodore.
What Stephen appears to be doing at the moment is running all the way down to the bottom of this tank load. So, and I reckon at the moment, it's not a bad plan to just have a bit of a look and see what the weather's going to do before you commit yourself to a tyre change back onto another slick. So this looks to me to be half a decent gamble at the moment.
Let's get a quick snapshot here. He's your race leader, Stephen Johnson. Hasn't come in yet. Mark Winterbottom's in second. He is yet to pit as well. Will Davison is third. Then we've got Todd Kelly, Greg Murphy, James Moffat, Jason Barguana, Carl Reindler and Tony D'Alberto, our top 9 yet to pit.
Alex Davison, this man was 10th before he came in, and Rick Kelly, of the cars that have stopped, Rick Kelly is your leader from Craig Lowndes. So when this first bunch of stops sanitises this race, we'll get a bit better feel for where Rick Kelly is versus Steve Johnson. But definitely, as Neil said, sometimes just to stay out on the road when the changing conditions like this make it difficult to read the conditions, then you're better off to be out there and understand what's going on rather than having to make a tyre call. Steve Johnson was 2 seconds a lap slower on the last lap than his fastest lap. So it's about 2 seconds slower at the moment in these conditions.
Guys, quick update from the Wing Cup garage. They're just wheeling the car back out now. Dead on the money there. It was the left-hand front steering arm that's bent. It's now been replaced, so it'll be as good as gold, but just a couple of laps down.
All right, well, the gap, if you go between Stephen Johnson down to Rick Kelly, the first of those to pit in the queue, the gap is 46 seconds from Stevie back to Rick Kelly.
Traffic coming around the corner. Are going on now. Up tyres up, far behind. Okay, just waiting on fuel. And you'll have a clear. Go. Hey mate, good job. Let's hope this works in our favour. It's a partial gamble either way. We only have to do 16 laps on these tyres to get to the next fuel window if it's wrong. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying?
Wheels come in. They have put wets on car number 6. You can see that it's raining, but it's not raining heavy enough to get any advantage out of that. What's happened to Stephen Johnson? Well, this is the view from Mark Winterbottom's car, and Junior leading the race at that stage gets spun around.
Okay,
so there'll be some drama about that.
We knew he'd gone around. We didn't know why. This answers that question, and that's going to put, I think, Mark Winterbottom in the sin bin because he wasn't quite far enough up the inside. But that's a judgment call that'll be made in race control. It may even be one that they consider after the race. But at the moment, Winterbottom's got 3.6 seconds as a margin over Todd Kelly, and that puts a question mark over the leadership of the race.
And just as you say that, Neil, it's starting to rain quite heavily on pit lane here, and that move to put wets on Will Davo's car was actually his own. That was his call from the driver's seat. Might have been a good one.
Yeah, and I reckon that, you know, some days, as you well know, Mark, it just pays dividends to have a bit of a crack at an alternative strategy, particularly if you're buried in the order a little bit and you're going to spend the rest of the afternoon banging around for 10th place or whatever it is. Why not just try for a little strategic gamble that might vault you to the top? And if the weather continues like it looks at the moment, it could end up being the smart call.
Totally agree. You're dead right, Neil. And, you know, run with the pack if you're with the pack. If you're not, go out on the limb.
And with that one, Larko, the hard part now is until this last piece of rain, we saw Will Davison go out and it wasn't wet enough for those wets, so the guys on slicks rounded him up. But now it's raining hard enough that, as you can see, Steve Johnson has come in for wets. Now, what Neil was referring to, it's a safe bet when you've got the wet tyre on in wet conditions, and you only need to get to lap 34 to get to the next window. So even if it's wrong, it doesn't really hurt you that much.
It is, because it's known universally as a very durable wet weather tyre. It's not a super soft wet tyre. And we've seen on occasion, there's been some races historically where we've seen astonishing longevity out of the Dunlop wet tyre. And street circuit like this, not high abrasion, it's not super high speed, you might be able to get it to play along for a while. Lowndes. Oh, look at
Wheels
this.
have stopped.
Skate straight through.
That is so dangerous.
Now they're going to have to take it back in position.
Brake, please, brake.
That is...
Going up, please, Paul. Thank you. Sorry about that one, mate.
Well, exactly the same thing just happened to Garth Tander, and I don't think he's done anything to that car. They've waved him on.
Rears are done.
I'm
Fuel's done. First here.
Surprised that...
Coming down, getting wait. Okay, go.
This will be interesting.
Hold, go behind. Verge behind. Thank you.
I'm surprised that more of the teams aren't counselling the boys harder about having to slow down enough, because we've seen it before here in the past in damp practice sessions and so forth. Somebody's taken a whack here. One of the crew guys, one of the Toll HRT guys, a bit buckled up, uncomfortable. So you're going to have to take it very, very gently into these working areas at the moment.
And you can see there's grip tape. When you mark the bay out, they actually use it in grip tape that you would put on top of a skateboard. We use it on the pedals inside the car, for instance. And sometimes that across the bay is the thing to have when it's so slippery like this.
Yeah, you're on the money there, Scapey. I've just wiped my foot across a variety of the tape down here that you talk about, and I tell you, that is a lot of the problem in a lot of the bays. It is slippery as.
So Winterbottom's come in, and he was the race leader. He'll be back out on a wet tyre now, no doubt.
And that puts Rick Kelly back at the top of the queue. 6 seconds is the gap at the front for Rick Kelly.
And remember, Rick's performance in the wet is very, very good.
Oh, that's a skating rig. Cold tyres. Oh, and again
everybody through. You've just got to slow up.
That's 2 in a row.
Brake. Okay, wait for the car to go up, please. Wait, thank you. Fuel on. Take our time, boys. Take our time. Sorry, J-Dub. It's super slippery.
Remember, it's only 40k when you come in. Look at this. This is raining hard now. That's the heaviest we've seen.
Rick Kelly's come in.
On the right
Well, Rick Kelly's about to come in, I believe.
Good to go. Forward.
Remember one bloke's name, Will Davison. He's already got the slicks on. He got the jump early.
Wets.
They took the gamble. Watch this. Sorry, the wets.
Oh.
Oh, he copped a whack in the leg. Sprung back up. Oh, man.
So 50. I think Rick Kelly will be in for wets, and you can just see how gingerly these guys are going to drive these cars. It is so slippery. We've said it already about the painted lines, the bumps, the different surfaces, the manhole covers, you name it, they've got to deal with it. And this is as slippery and as wild as you will ever see. As Rick Kelly, your effective race leader, is in pit lane. And real steady, real steady. Well done, Rick Kelly. Well pulled up.
Holding. Rears are done, mate. Rears are done. Pit lane's clear. Just waiting on front. Okay, go. Straight to fast lane.
Now James Courtney.
Courtney's actually found his way into the top 10 through all this.
That was coming in. That's that dip at the entry to pit lane.
Oh, that is an unbelievably good bit of driving.
He was lucky then, because another couple of feet and he would have been hard into that wall on the right.
Fantastic driving from Courtney also. That is as good as it gets, and they're all spun round in the same spot that Guy rated.
GRM cars is backwards at the lane, right at the lane entry.
And he's been collected too. Oh, he's collected the wall coming in through there.
Well, we just saw 2 guys with incredible car control, and now we see Jonathan Webb with a lot of damage to the front of the Mother Falcon. Russell Ingles in. Behind him is Steve Owen. We've got a car rotated, and this is Garth Tander trying to get by. This will cost him time.
It's Holdsworth.
It's Lee Holdsworth. Oh, nobody wants to wait around there too. There's hardly any room coming through there. I mean, it's not designed for 2 cars for a reason. Lee Holdsworth has come in there and got all crossed up. And now pit lane has just become a traffic jam. It's a mess.
What that will be, Matt, is because there's a lot of angle on the road there in that last bit of a ramp, as we just see Rick Kelly running straight down the escape road with the wheels locked. Sorry, it's Todd Kelly. Spins around. He was your effective leader in front of Mark Winterbottom, so that was a battle for the lead. Steve Johnson goes by.
He's going to sneak back up the inside, believe it or not.
If you can see it. Oh, there he is.
And there's Russell Ingle, who was caught up in that frac car on the way in, and all the wheels are locked again. Todd Kelly hasn't got the brake balance right on that car yet. So he's got to wind some brake to the rear of that car. And this is a bad spot. We've already seen guys off the road here through qualifying. Wow.
Well, it's hard to get a grip on who's actually where in this race. Van Gisbergen caught up at the entry to pit lane. They're still trying to get Lee Holdsworth's car out of the way. So has Van Gisbergen hit anything, or has he just been held up?
I think he must have had a...
He's been held up in there.
Here we go. So this is it. This is the ramp that I was talking about.
One
He's
tap,
sideways.
2 taps.
Rotates. A really good bit of driving by Lee Holdsworth there at the end for that to have spun. But here's Ingle. So Carl Reindler, Ingle, and there's Van Gisbergen.
Now, they won't be too impressed with the fact that that's happened after the fact.
Oh, he hit it.
The fact that Van Gisbergen's arrived down there with a lot of flags out and what have you after the fact, that would not be smiled upon at all.
Well, he definitely hit it. There'll be some pretty hefty damage to the right rear side.
Oh, and there's Jason Bright.
Jason Bright in the back of Russell Ingle, you'd have to say. He pulled it up just. Carl Reindler squeezes through.
Good bit of driving, Jason Bright.
It's the best racing we've seen in pit lane in years.
But it's not just about the yellow flag and the caution. Every driver should have been told on the radio prior to that you've got to be careful on the way into the pit. So, wow. But
being careful on the way into the pit, you wouldn't expect that there'd be a car sitting there sideways.
Probably not.
Don't you reckon?
But you would say that the entry to the pit is blocked. So Craig Lowndes in front of James Courtney. This is a pretty healthy battle. Remember, Whincup's lost positions because of his contact with the fence, leaving the pit area earlier in the race. So Whincup's not in this game, but Courtney and Lowndes certainly are. So Mark Winterbottom leads from Steve Johnson, Todd Kelly, Will Davison, and James Moffat. Very good job. His first time here. And Lowndes is out of control. Wheels locked and down the escape road. Sorry, that was Whincup. Man, I thought he was going to hit the back of Courtney.
He's had a shocker, hasn't he? I mean, he clouded the wall on the pit lane exit. He overshot in pit lane and then he stayed down at once. So this will be...
No stress.
This will be one that Whincup ruse, but he's got cushion in the championship. He's going to lose a little bit of that today in this race, and that's just typical of the ups and downs of the pressure of the game.
These are the kind of races you just cannot leave.
We are, mate. So we are.
You don't know what's going to happen next.
Have a look at the visibility, Matt, down the main straight there. You just cannot see. It's so difficult, and you can't find your braking marker. And look at that there. That's exactly the point. You can't find the braking marker. So when you see Whincup disappear off the end of the main straight there, he wouldn't have known where the braking marker was. So this is the main straight. Have a look at this. You're blazing down there at almost 250 kilometres an hour. You can't position the car anywhere where there's not a painted line or not a bump. And there we see two guys off the end of the main straight there. That was Garth Tander and Jason Bargwanna, right behind Rick Kelly. And this is the run from turn 1 down to turn 2. This is where this big camber on the road, massive crowning on the road there as Bargwanna makes a pass on Rick Kelly and Garth Tander right behind him.
And the road surface change as well, the concrete down there as well. You've seen how slippery it is in pit lane. Supercars in the mist.
So the Bargwanna move is for position on Rick Kelly.
Yep.
But Tander's one lap down in this sequence.
So that's actually for position as we see. Tony D'Alberto is 6th. So good job. Really good drive. Bargwanna is next in the queue in 7th. Rick Kelly 8th. And you've just got to be so careful. The paint on that curb there is like ice. This is a great shot of the footwell of the current series champion, James Courtney, and the Toll Holden Racing Team Commodore. And just take notice of this throttle pedal and how gentle he's got to be on the throttle and the way he has to modulate that. Just look at this, look at this. Tiny little movements. So this is into 6, heavy braking area, and just watch for the throttle position. Gentle. Again, not flat until right around that kink. Brakes it hard. This is a very slippery spot. Oh, he's almost in the fence. He is in the fence. So now he's trying to get reverse gear. You can hear that grinding. And he's only just bumped the fence, so there's probably not much damage as he wheels it away in first gear, second gear. We were on board as Courtney understeered straight into the outside wall. We saw Paul Dumbrell in there yesterday. It's one of the trickiest and probably in terms of unforgiving areas of the track, one of the most demanding.
So lap 27 out of 59. Mark Winterbottom is our race leader from Stephen Johnson and Will Davison.
There's a bit more to the pit lane trauma as well. There's actually oil involved in all that, which has just been discussed on the race management channel. So here's the replay of what happened to James down here, and fortunately the cushion of the tyres makes life a little bit nicer for the front of that Holden Commodore. So with all the damage that we saw earlier, somebody's ended up with a fractured oil cooler or a line, and that put oil into the mix as well. This is Tim Slade pointing in the wrong direction, was in 16th position. Can't even quite work out where that is.
It's down into turn 2, I think, Neil, and it's a long way down the escape road. Have a look how far it is.
You're right there, Slade. You're right, buddy. Go straight to fast. Reminder of the merge. Need to go to trim 4. Trim 4, just take it real easy. Need to conserve as much fuel as we can under the safety car. Keep going until you get the train though. safe to do so.
Confirming lifting speed to 80 kilometres an hour where it's safe to do so.
Okay, mate, let's be careful on these tyres, fresh ones. Car light chart, accelerate into pit lane, car 5, maintain speed.
This will explain what happened to Tim Slade. So that was at the end of the main straight. No wonder. Oh, he went right through.
Gee, those tyres did an outstanding job.
Great job,
then.
absolutely.
Look at the pace of the car here until it reaches the tyre bank. Watch this. And it just immediately pulls a heap of speed out of it. Otherwise, it would have made terrible impact with that wall down the end. So, well done.
They're about 2.5 tonnes, those big tyre bundles, and it certainly did exactly what it was designed to do in that braking area.
Now, the reason why Whincup has got to go through the lane, he's compelled to because he's more than two laps down
behind.
under the safety car.
Yep.
He's got to take a position at the back of the queue.
We always say safety cars breed safety cars in the wet. Well, it's just even worse. Let's see how they go on this restart now. Winterbottom is our race leader. He's going to have to come in sooner or later. Stephen Johnson, Will Davison, James Moffat, Tony D'Alberto, Todd Kelly, Bargwanna, Murphy make up your top 8. Your effective leader would have to be Rick Kelly as Davison pushes through another position.
Gee, the visibility when you're more than half a dozen cars back here will be terrible. You look at the margin from about position 6 back at the end of this first flying lap. They'll give away 15 seconds just trying to find their way around. Look at it. This is what it's like mid-pack. It's horrid.
And not only that, Neil, you've got to get through this phase of the race until you can make your last stop, because you've got to get out of this without any damage. So for Rick Kelly, he is in the middle of that pack. You can hardly see. That's Todd Kelly, Jason Bargwanna, Rick Kelly in behind that, with Greg Murphy right behind him. So it is on for young and old in that mid-pack where there is zero visibility. Have a look at that. You'd like to be in there, Cropper.
No, thanks. So, interesting now to see whether or not Todd Kelly, who's got 3 stops next to his name, who's fueled on lap 28, can play a gambling game to get the thing through to the end, because it's going to be a real squeak on fuel.
Yeah, you're dead right, Neil. I was just talking to the boys there. It's going to be very much so. If this starts to dry out and we get that dry line emerging, they're in a heap of strife. But Scaife, you remember you led over and held me on the hand on the way to the circuit this morning and said, Barco, some days you get up and you didn't want to be a race driver? And I agree. This is one of them days.
Yeah, so,
Will Davison runs wide. James Moffat, we were just saying how well he was going. Makes a little mistake down at turn 1 and comes out of 4th spot and loses seven positions, goes to 11th from 4th. So when you make a little mistake at a restart like that, because the field is condensed, you pay a much bigger penalty. If that was normal conditions in the race, you might only lose 1 spot under that scenario. So James Moffat, a heavy penalty, 7 positions for a locked break at turn 1. So Winterbottom from Johnson, from Will Davison, who we saw go down the escape road slightly at turn 1, D'Alberto and Todd Kelly. That's your top 5. So we were saying in the break about whether Mark Winterbottom should have had a punt and come in and put fuel in and made the last stop, because they're not quite at the last window. In the rain, we think the fuel window is lap 31. In the dry, the fuel window is lap 34. So we're right on the verge.
Dean Fiore's getting a black flag next time through for leaping across the electronic loops in turn 4. So he'll have a pit lane drive-through penalty for exceeding the allowance that the competitors are being given down there. Yeah, so Campbell Little said to Mark Winterbottom when they were discussing it on the radio during the safety car period, we're not inside our fuel range to be able to achieve this. I think I said earlier that Todd had done 3-step stops. I meant 2 before, by the way. Just, oh, look at Jason Bargwanna straight down at turn 1. So the real interesting point here will be that Winterbottom is out of sequence relative to those that are taking the gamble behind.
There he is. So the question for FPR is, when will they need to bring in Mark Winterbottom? How much will he gain or lose in these next couple of laps while they play the waiting game to get him inside into pit lane? Stephen Johnson, second, 2.6 seconds behind.
So that's clearing behind. That's where the weather's come from. So the dark cloud that you can see is the one that we've just got the shower from. Behind that, that's clearing. So you'd have to say that as this race runs into 59 laps,
looks a bit different at ground level.
It does, but it will, as we said earlier, when you do get a little dry line, then the lap time yield is massive. So you've just got to use your head to get through this phase of the race.
So let me just reiterate this, because it's important to grasp who's where with their fuel strategies. Winterbottom, who leads the race, last stopped on 21. Stephen Johnson, who's in position 2, last stopped on 20. Will Davison in position 3. He was one of the first drivers to get on wets earlier on in the trading post entry. He last stopped on 18. Tony D'Alberto, who's just leapt the curbs down at turn 4. D'Alberto stopped on lap 20. Then the first in the queue, who might, and it's only just an inverted commas might, get through to the end of the race, are both Todd and Rick. They're 5th and 6th. Carl Reindler with a bit of sprint car action at turn 5. He was lucky to get away with that one when the car falls down the wrong side of the curb. So it's both the Kellys in 5th and 6th that we need to keep one eye on. They stopped. Let me see, the last time for, 28 for both the brothers.
And Greg Murphy as well.
And the question will be, and of course they're all from the same stable, whether they can get the cars to perform on that tank full of fuel all the way to the flag. It'll depend on how wet it is, how slow the lap speed is, what the fuel burn is.
And Rick has just got ahead of Todd in terms of track position. Just have a look at how hard this is for James Courtney. For any driver, any lap at the moment is a real handful. Through that turn 4 chicane, up to turn 5. It's where a moment ago we saw Carl Reindler get really wide up over the curb. A few years ago, Jamie Whincup went up there and virtually never came back, connected with the wall. Up through 6. Massive bumps around here. Courtney's already found the wall at this part of the circuit when we were riding with him last.
It was this wall here, Matt, on the left. He went straight in there. So he's got speed on Bargwanna, Neil, hasn't he? He's ranged up onto the back of Jason Bargwanna.
The other guy that's in the same position strategically as both the Kellys and Greg Murphy is Craig Lowndes, who's always got wet weather form. Lowndes stopped on lap 28 as well. So all those guys are going to be heavily focused on how to make the cars do what they need to do.
check out what's happened so far. Take a big, deep breath, everybody, especially if you're one of our cameramen, because it was chaos in pit lane. Van Gisbergen, then Jamie Whincup. Team members were getting knocked over. That was a heavy one from the Fujitsu guys, and Michael Caruso's crew copped a real whack. And then at the top, somehow Rick Kelly managed to gather it together. Not so Lee Holdsworth. He tapped his way through there and ended up pointing the wrong way. That caused a traffic jam. Poor old Russell Ingall arrived with nowhere to go. Carl Reindler was already stuck there. Jason Bright turns up. You know what it's like when you go down the car park on a Saturday morning at your local shopping centre and it's pouring rain and there's trolleys flying around everywhere. Think of that. Add V8 Supercars and a couple of 100 Ks to the mix. Tim Slade enormously lucky to walk away from that one. The safety bundle, tyre bundle, did its job to stop him there. Was there any racing in those highlights?
Oh.
Haven't had much, but actually the racing has been quite good. At the start of the race, it was really good. And if we get to the end of this race and find that Rick Kelly takes home the race victory, we will have to rewind all the way, because he got a great start from third on the grid, out-jumped everyone by spearing across to the other side of the main straight. And effectively, if Rick's going to win this race today, that's one of the pieces of the puzzle that would have helped him say, that's how I did it. The rest, of course, as you've seen, has unfolded very differently with this rain and chaos everywhere else. So it's Winterbottom on the road, 3.7 seconds clear of Stephen Johnson, then Will Davison. But Rick Kelly is the best of those to have stopped later. He stopped on lap 28.
Now, Frosty's going to need to come in around about lap 49 if he's going to go all the way to the end of this fuel load. He doesn't have to go that far, of course. He can fill it up from an earlier point to get it home. But there is the question mark hanging over him of the contact with Stephen Johnson earlier in the race, which no doubt will be investigated. At the moment, he's in a good position. But we're holding our breath to see what happens to Rick Kelly, Todd Kelly, Greg Murphy, Craig Lowndes, Jason Bargwanna and James Courtney, positions 4 through to 9, that all stopped as a result of the safety car that was triggered by Tim Slade. Came out on lap 28, they dived in, they've grabbed fuel. That fuel range that they have from that point in the race is really dodgy to get to the checkered flag. If they can go into fuel conservation mode, just as James Courtney did in Abu Dhabi, they might make it to the end of the race. Those in front of them, Winterbottom, Stevie Johnson, Will Davison, they won't get there. So the road will open up to Rick Kelly at the moment, but can they get home? So that's it in a nutshell.
I think Courtney may have made a mistake here, because Van Gisbergen's up in front of him now, and that's not actually for position, because Van Gisbergen's 18th. Courtney was right behind Bargwanna before, so there's been some change. He was right up behind this pack, and as Neil just said, he was on the same strategy. Craig Lowndes now showing good speed to get down the inside of Greg Murphy, but this battle's not over. Former teammates.
And it is for position 6th and 7th, and Lowndes is one of them who came in and took advantage of that safety car, grabbed fuel. Bargwanna in there as well in the Jana Living entry, and he's actually snuck up on Murphy, who's dropped 2 spots in 2 corners.
And there's Courtney, so he's definitely had a problem, because he's now 100 metres behind Jason Bargwanna.
So Bargwanna's in this, together with Lowndes. They are fighting for position.
Bargwanna's always had good weather form, Neil, hasn't he? He's a guy that's always grabbed a result in these sorts of conditions. And a big slide there for Lowndes off the last curb in the turn 4 chicane. He got right out sideways, wheel spin in 4th gear as he comes up behind Todd Kelly. And this is also for position. So he'll be looking for a pass, because the visibility is so bad. You need to be able to dive and to get some visibility for yourself in these conditions.
This is a great way for Bargwanna to introduce a new commercial partner to his team and the series. Commercial and residential builders from his hometown of Warragul in Victoria. So they launched down in Victoria last Saturday, painted the car up. This is the same car that Jason Richards used to beautiful effect in the non-championship event at the Grand Prix, and I'm sure
we look after fuel as well. Bargwanna, loose cannon behind.
I'm sure Jason is watching at home, so our best wishes as always, and a reminder of that bidforjace.com if you want to help.
Now this has the makings of a problem because there's two very different styles here. Todd Kelly breaks the car very straight and turns it very late. Craig Lowndes, opposite. Here's Bargwanna down the inside. No,
done.
Gets it done.
We held our breath though for a moment, but he did get it done.
But what happens with Lowndes is he turns early, doesn't he, Neil?
Yes.
So you always have two guys like that trying to turn the car early with a guy on the outside turning in, always makes for contact. Very interesting battle in the middle of this field with Bargwanna, Lowndes and Kelly.
Visibility is just a major problem. At this stage of the race, it's the last thing you want, but they've been putting up with it for a long time now. And this battle that you're seeing is worth everything. It's Lowndes, Bargwanna and Murphy. Now they're 6th, 7th and 8th on the road. Down here at turn 5, somebody will get it wide. It'll be Michael Caruso. Oh, let's hope he gets it back. He does.
The water's now sitting up to such an extent that it's diabolical out there. So you'll so easily rotate a car, an aquaplane into a wall here at the moment. It's really extraordinary.
So Lowndes is 6th, Bargwanna is 7th, and behind him Greg Murphy is tucked in at 8th. Ahead of them is Todd Kelly and then Rick Kelly in 5th and 4th respectively. But by the time it shuffles down with Winterbottom, Johnson and Davison likely to have to come back in, you're looking at Lowndes, Bargwanna and Murphy fighting for an effective podium position, if not more. More on that to play out.
Yeah, a couple of updates from down on the pit lane. Spec Stevie Johnson in around lap 47. Neil, I think you said Winterbottom 49. You're on the money there. Kelly, Lowndes, these guys reckon they're okay if it's wet to the end, but you're dead right. If there's, and it is, I mean, it's still bucketing down here, but if that clears and we get a dry line emerge, I reckon it's anyone's game.
Like I've made a career out of putting the wrong tyre on at the wrong time, and when I looked at the sky there before and said it was clearing, that was a good read, wasn't it? This is the hardest it's rained. And you can see in the bunker the intensity up and down pit lane with fuel strategy for the guys that will have to make another stop and for the guys who think they can get to the end and have to conserve that fuel. So the Kellys, Lowndes, Bargwanna, Murphy and Courtney from 4th through to 9th are the guys that we're referring to who should be able to make it through whilst these conditions are like this. Oh, Courtney almost off again in the same spot as Van Gisbergen goes back by James Courtney.
But Shane is a lap down on James, so it doesn't really matter. And that's the sort of information at this point in a mentally stressful race.
Okay, think about your bars, mate. If we can save enough fuel, that group in front of you are the leaders.
So Scott Sinclair, his engineer, starting to echo the sounds that he heard in Abu Dhabi, if we can save enough fuel. So the message that needs to go to James there is don't worry too much about Shane. Just get back into your own rhythm. There's Garth Tander in the foreground. He's down the order as well in 17th. He's a lap down. I think he ended up back there as a result of some of the confusion in the pit early on when it was all jammed up and congested. We think he may have sailed through the pit and had to come in later.
Oh, Lowndes almost off. Almost in the fence for Craig Lowndes. And the rule on this one, if you're alongside each other into this chicane, the guy on the left has right of way. That was done in the driver's briefing. And there's something wrong with Lowndes there because he's pulled back off that battle.
Jeremy spoke to him and said, just be careful. So Craig's saying, he was talking about etiquette there. There was a ruling determined in the drivers' meeting about who had right of way when they got to the chicane, but I think Craig just got out of it a bit earlier then. So this is 4th position. So Lowndes 7th, Murphy 8th, Courtney 9th. And Craig, in fact, on that occasion, fired across the electronic loop in turn 4 when he got out of it, being gentlemanly, and then tripped over the electronic boundary line.
So this is the most slippery that we've seen all weekend so far. The heaviest rain that has occurred throughout the race. As you can see, the visibility is terrible down into turn 1, and they can't find their braking marker. That's why so many cars have been down the escape road.
And it's varying lap to lap. So one of the reasons they can't find it is it's got nothing to do with competency. It does have a lot to do with visibility. But the extraordinary thing about these conditions, particularly when it's varying, because even looking out of our commentary box area, through 180 degrees, you can see that some parts of the racetrack are absolutely drenched and others not quite so bad. So look at it, it's like an ice skating rink down there at the moment. This is on board with Winterbottom. That was turn 5. So the problem is, with this amount of water around and it varying from corner to corner of this postcode, it just becomes a nightmare trying to drive to a rhythm, because last lap's rhythm doesn't necessarily work on this lap. That's the problem.
Absolutely. And you've just got to read it, don't you, Neil? It's so hard. The visibility's so poor. And the amount of water. So that's standing water there. So the water in a puddle has burst into wheel spin the car around a slight right-hand kink and has forced the car sideways at a spot that you don't need it, because you're basically sideways the wrong direction.
Now, Stephen Johnson, that we're looking at on screen at the moment, stopped a lap earlier than Mark Winterbottom, so we should be seeing him in earlier than those guys that he's currently racing. So, and he's coming up to the fringe where that's kind of about to happen.
We think that's about lap 46 off our numbers. There's Dick looking on.
And if you go
doing his best.
If you go by those numbers, look at that wheel. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Imagine this. Where's the braking marker? Where is it? Where's it coming? I'll just
where's the track?
Where's the
let
track?
alone the braking marker?
Where's Hamilton gone?
Now, the other
that
guy...
was teammates. Sorry, I'll just finish that. If we go on those figures, with Winterbottom and Johnson coming in, roughly about 49 seconds in pit lane, they will pop out at the bottom end of the top 10. So now's the time to make as much ground as you can, if you can. Well, if you remember a while back, on lap 18, in fact, this man made the big call to go on wets first. It certainly paid dividends for Will Davison. He's top 3 at the moment. He will have to stop again, of course,
in the next 3 or 4 laps.
Yep. But it looks as though it's going to put him inside the top 10, and he started 13th.
And everyone's complaining over the radio now that they're saying, put the safety car out, put the safety car out, because it is so wet as Garth Tander fires off the road into turn 5. So everyone's saying, you've got to get the safety car out because there's standing water everywhere and we can't drive the car when it's like this. So, and there's not one person, there is about 10 on the radio saying it.
Yeah, and Scapey, I wonder if the other little strategy going on there, and I do sympathise with it, well, there you are. That's probably part of the reason. It is very close on field down here, mate. I was just having a look over the shoulder of a couple of teams. Rick Kelly, they're going to have 1.8 litres left at the end of the race if it stays like this. So if it starts to dry a bit, they're gone. Jason Bargwana, he's about 7 laps short at the moment. So if it stays really wet, that'll work for them. So I tell you, this ain't over.
Now, Craig Lowndes just talking to Jeremy Moore while you were speaking then, Mark, and he's saying it's nothing to do with the windscreen. Here's the replay of Dean Fiore, turn 5. Very lucky not to pick up the concrete in that process. And he actually managed to get back, do a U-turn and rejoin the racetrack. Craig's saying that he just cannot see the racetrack, which I said tongue-in-cheek a few moments ago, but it's a reality. There's so much standing water that the blocks on those wets that Mark Larkham showed you at the start of our telecast cannot clear the amount of water. Now, if you're where Mark Winterbottom is at the moment, it's not so bad because there's no cars around you, so you're not driving into that giant cloud. But for those that are racing others, it's a horror story.
Look at it out the windscreen there. I mean, everything around him is reflected by the water in front. Standing water everywhere.
So what happens in a couple of spots, the standing water basically lays in any of the dips, so the cars will burst into wheel spin in 6 gear. You can hear even down the straight, Mark Winterbottom had to be very gentle with the throttle. But what happens in other spots is because there's undulations, the water runs out of the drains and into the lower areas. So there's little rivers of water that catch the car also. And when you can't see, what Craig Lowndes is saying, when you don't really know where you are on the road, you can't deviate from that.
Here comes Davison. So we called a few moments ago that he would be in. He came in, as Matt said a moment ago, on lap 18. He was the first to make the strategic call to wets. It was a good call. it gave him security. They've slowed him up nice and gently. Taken one of the tear-offs from the screen. So this is all nice and calm in there.
Drops you go, mate.
And leaving the warm tyres on, Neil.
Go.
There's no way you'd want to put cold tyres on at the moment.
What a difference. I mean, the last time everybody had to come into pit lane, it was an absolute nightmare. It wasn't far off. This is on approach. That was Will Davis entangling with Jason Bright. Here's Todd Kelly. Oh, look at the amount of water down at turn 5.
And what it does is it dams up against the concrete curbing. So you get a little pool on the outside. This is James Moffat with a lot of damage around the front of that car.
Slow, mate, nice and slow.
It's been that way for a while. Look how dark it is, too, in pit lane.
He's done a good job, guys. This is his first time at Hamilton.
Good to go when they drop
And he's
you.
currently 12th when he rolled into pit lane then. But this is as wild as it gets. And in terms of his experience, this will be good for him.
Yeah, and an indication of how bad this is. I'm standing about the middle of pit lane, which is about the middle of the straight, and you want to hear the cars coming past. I stuck my head out. I thought it was a safety car, but the cars are rolling out of the throttle before applying their foot on the brakes on the main straight. Now, that's a giveaway. It is tough out there.
Now, interesting to look at reality, because the reality of the fuel numbers for Will Davison is he just got 27 laps out of the tank, and he stopped on lap stopped on lap 18, I'm sorry. But he had the benefit of a couple of laps of safety car after that, and then he's done 27 laps thereafter. So I reckon that Largo was saying before that Kelly's reckon there's margin at the end of this race. I tell you, it's going to be... I reckon the pace is a bit quicker than they'd like at the moment, believe it or not.
The only thing is because it's the slowest that we've seen, it's a minute 41s and 42s, so it's 18 seconds slower than the race time. So we are going to see who can do the best lap time, still doing the best fuel economy, and this is a real test for a guy like Rick Kelly.
Okay, so Rick Kelly last came in on lap 28. Yep. You're saying 27 at most?
Yeah, he did 27 laps, but of course that's assuming he was out of fuel.
Yeah.
They may have just brought him in because at any point from now on they can fill him and get him home. So I'm only assuming he was empty or very close to it. And this is the problem when you're commentary box engineering, you don't have the critical numbers to play with.
It's been that kind of day. Who will hold on and take out race 5 of the championship? You're riding with James Moffat, the Jim Beam Racing crew. Dick Johnson racing in 12th position in his debut here on the streets of Hamilton, one he won't forget.
And his teammate Stephen Johnson has just been called to the pit lane, Matt. So Steve Johnson in position 2 at the moment, car number 17, will be in this lap, the Jim Beam entry.
Michael Caruso leaves, completing another stop. So that's three trips into pit lane for Michael Caruso. One was an adventurous one that some of his team members will not forget either. There's David Reynolds, and here comes Stephen Johnson. That's around turn 3.
There might be a safety car. Something's happened up the back.
Reynolds.
Taking too long to heat up. He's in. Steve, in the flat, careful, pit lane entry, slippery. Pit lane entry, slippery, in.
Now, Stephen Johnson was calling for new tyres, but the point there was they would take too long to heat up, and you've only got 3 sets for the rest of the weekend. Now, David's car's damaged sufficiently that he's going to struggle here.
Here we go.
At turn 2. And he's made contact there with Caruso, who's, as we just saw, had just left pit lane.
This is turn 2.
I didn't think Michael was going to make the corner. He looked like he was going too fast.
His front's
got
locked.
the wheels locked, that's why. So, and David, you can't see because the inside of the windows are effectively fogged up. Plus, you've got the harness device. This is Winterbottom in pit lane.
You're dead right there, Scapey. So what's happening here? These cars, remember, don't have all the nice sill rubbers and rubbers to keep all the water out. When it buckets and puddles like this, the water goes into the floor. No carpet there, steel floor, lots of steam, and you can see those windows fogged up. It's a no-brainer for a side-on stack like that.
So these two guys just got 26 laps out of a load of fuel.
You know what this does? With Winterbottom coming in, Stephen Johnson coming in, That puts Rick Kelly to the top of the tree. Todd Kelly second, Jason Bargwanna third, Greg Murphy fourth. That's Kelly Racing first, second, third and fourth.
But can they get home?
That's the biggest
question. Is the punchline to that. Can they get home?
So on the same strategy, just so we get this right for you, James Courtney, we've already said, is on the same strategy, but his track position is behind Murphy. And Craig Lowndes, I'm just looking for Lowndes, he stopped on the same lap also.
He's just jumped into third.
And he's right behind the Kelly brothers. So this battle, this healthy battle that we've been watching now for many laps, Rick Kelly, Todd Kelly, Craig Lowndes, Jason Bargwanna and James Courtney are all on, and Greg Murphy in behind that also. So there's actually 5 of the 7 are on this strategy, and we are now riding with Mark Winterbottom.
Oh, it's insane.
With no visibility.
Honestly,
that is madness.
What's going on in front of him is just insane. Jason Bargwanna and Shane Van Gisbergen. So this is all changing yet again. Rick Kelly leads the race. Todd Kelly is second. But it'd have to be close to the play of the day if Todd can stay there and make it to the end. He started 19th. Barg started 25th. He's up in 4th.
But they've got to do 31 laps, given that where they stopped, which was lap 28. So Rick and Todd, Greg, Bargs, they've got to do 31 laps. We haven't seen evidence of that. This is Murphy and Bargwanna. A little bit of Morse code down.
They've had a history of drama, haven't they, those two boys?
Okay, so that explains why Craig Lowndes managed to jump Bargwanna and split that top 4 Kelly Racing.
Right.
Remember, those guys are out of the same stable.
So the fuel numbers in this car are the fascinating point.
And when it is as wet as this and the lap speed is so significantly slower, this is their only way home, because you've hardly got the throttle open. You've got to be so careful in terms of the way you drive the car, which looks after its fuel economy. So that was Rick Kelly. This is Todd. So just for your own understanding of track position, that's number 2, that's second. Third is Craig Lowndes in the rear of shot in the Vodafone Holden Commodore.
And he's been massively vocal about wanting the race arrested under a safety car because he reckons he just can't see.
Hey guys, spare a thought for Tony D'Alberto. Today you could probably do without your air conditioner or your MP3 player. No wipers, mate. He's lost his wipers.
Of all things.
You love that sort of stuff, Larko, don't you? Oh, big slide again. We've seen Lowndes with large amounts of oversteer on the exit of the last part of that chicane. So there's Tony D'Alberto, and as you can see, that wiper is in the standing position in the middle of the windscreen and clearly not doing the job that he would like it to be.
Doing a good job. Doing good.
These cars have got a single sweep wiper, which is positioned, as you can see, at the lower centre of the windscreen. There's a full sweep across the screen. And this little battle continues.
Now it's Winterbottom taking aim at Bargwanna. So the Jana Living entry out of Brad Jones Racing really copping a hammering at the moment.
Good bit of driving from both guys. Really good bit of driving to get around there together, and for Bargwanna to take track position around the outside through the kink before turn 8. Let's stay on board just for a sec, because you'll see what sort of visibility the guys are dealing with. And to find your braking marker down there, there's standing water, it's very, very bumpy, and Bargwanna runs wide, and Winterbottom comes out of turn 1 right behind Jason's Commodore.
You should have a listen to just the wheel spin. Let's have a listen to this.
Incredibly close. Out of turn 5, Bargwanna had a monstrous big slide, and Winterbottom missed him by nothing and almost fed Bargwanna's Commodore into the fence. We all ducked because it was as close as you would ever get. Wow.
Heart skipped a beat then. And oh, wow, that was a scary moment. It's interesting to listen to the throttle control. Here he is again from outside the car at 5.
Oh.
Jason ended up on the top of the curb. Mark Winterbottom had to jink to the right to avoid. And we all went flatline in the commentary box for 5 seconds.
And when you ride with Mark Winterbottom for that lap and you could hear the gentle modulation of the throttle, that's why the fuel economy is better. Clearly, you can't use the throttle like you would normally be able to do.
Change the tyre there, just want to try something with the tyre pressures. About 7 minutes to go. At the end of this lap. Watch the blend line, watch the blend line. safety car will be pitting this lap, and we will be restarting at the end of this lap. Currently 6 laps remaining.
Safety car lights out, accelerating away from the field. Car 15 to maintain speed.
Debris on the front straight, and that forced a safety car. So throughout the ad break, we've just been trundling around in safety car formation, and the lights are out on the Pettis safety car, so the field will be released, and the field is led by Rick Kelly. His brother's behind him, then Craig Lowndes is third, Mark Winterbottom fourth position, Jason Bargwanna fifth. So off we go again. It's slippery. Look at Ingle. He's sliding around on the restart. The rain comes down. There is standing water everywhere.
It's a messy restart. It was very slow. And all this drama.
Well, Lowndes is going to get up straight away and push his Team Vodafone car ahead of Todd Kelly, I'd say. But Todd fights it. Todd's really fighting it. It's pouring down here at turn 2.
And Todd doesn't have a wiper. So see the wiper stationary on his car. He was talking about it during the safety car. He can't see where he's going. Ingle overshoots at 2.
I can't see where I'm going.
Todd Kelly, the voice.
Go, mate. Head down. He's still in a podium position.
He is driving blind. He's got Mark Winterbottom behind him, Craig Lowndes ahead of him, and he can't see all around him anywhere. Now, all of a sudden, he'll have car 5 alongside him. Rick goes through, then Lowndes, Todd, trying to hold on for a podium. Kelly Racing have never won a race.
And there's big aggravation in the paddock at the moment between Lowndes and Rick Kelly based on what happened at the Grand Prix support event. Rick's in his spare car. They spent the last 2 weeks repairing the Team Vodafone car. They now find themselves at the top of the tree in this race, and this will be a serious battle between them.
So the 2 big effects of the safety car is that the guys like Winterbottom, for instance, who were now okay for fuel, they've come in and put they filled the tank and they're fine. Their speed, they've condensed the field and they don't have to worry about fuel. The guys, the 3 cars in front, Rick Kelly, Craig Lowndes and Todd Kelly, are still on the cusp of fuel economy.
And they'll be running lean, even though these conditions, you wouldn't think it would have an effect, but it will. Bad sportsmanship flag also for both Jamie Whincup and for James Courtney for jumping the curb down at turn 4.
So have a look at these conditions.
Courtney on the inside of Jason Bargwanna.
Bumps his way through.
Position 5. Massive spray out the back of car 15. Over the windscreen of car 888. Down to turn 2.
Oh,
Winterbottom goes long and wide.
But he made it still, which was good. Very easy to run right down there.
And he was told by Campbell Little in the safety car period, no risks, because from a championship standpoint, he's going to get a giant boost today because of where Jamie Whincup's ended up.
And this is pressure motor racing for Rick Kelly with Craig Lowndes right behind him.
Lowndes just went through the chicane too aggressively, so he's now starting to get to a point where he could cop a warning.
So the dying stages of a race that's been pretty much underwater since the start. Can Rick Kelly hold on and get his first race win for the team that him and his brother own? Can he get his first race win in 3 years? Can Craig Lowndes get past him and get his first ever race win on New Zealand soil? He's achieved everything there is to in this game. That'll be another one for the Lowndes record books. So it's Kelly Brothers Racing against Team Vodafone at the front.
1 more, it's a bad sportsmanship, so just keep it smooth. 3 laps.
That's the warning. That's what I was referring to. For Craig Lowndes, that was Jeremy Moore, his engineer. So that's just letting Craig know that he's running out of lives down there.
And this is really high-level driving. I often say you know, about how good these guys are in these cars, but in these conditions, you watch the very best drivers in this part of the world on the slipperiest racetrack you can imagine, trying to get the very best from themselves in the car late in this race.
And
it's
not only
amazing.
that, the sun is now shining on them as well. So at various parts of the circuit, they're going to have a face full of sunshine through the windscreen, like that. And that's for a guy with a wiper.
And that's turn 3, which already this weekend has claimed a heap of drivers because the road just profiles away from the car turning direction. It's slippery. There's a different type of asphalt there. Curbs, paint, you name it.
And here's Winterbottom. He's almost in a position to dive. This is for position 3. This is for the podium. Mark Winterbottom with a huge amount of pressure on Todd Kelly without a windscreen wiper.
Regardless, this is a hell of a day for Kelly Brothers Racing. You got one of them leading the race, one on the podium, using every ounce of experience to try and stay on the circuit and hold back a guy like Mark Winterbottom. You've got Greg Murphy inside the top 7.
And we've really seen a jump in speed from the Jack Daniels cars. In fact, all the cars from Kelly Racing this year, they've taken a different engineering direction. They're looking stronger. But how tough is it out there at the moment for Todd not being able to see in these conditions? So the margin's actually opened up fractionally now between Rick and Craig, just ever so slightly.
So the pressure right on Todd Kelly to stay on the podium. His brother leading from Craig Lowndes. Mark Winterbottom right behind, and James Courtney. We saw him pass Bargwanna. He's in front of Murphy, Johnson, Will Davison, Coulthard and James Moffat. So he's in 5th position, James Courtney.
Bizarre thing about that car out in front, Rick Kelly's car. Remember, that's the old car they dragged out to replace his other car. I asked Barry Ryan, the team engineer, why it's a better car. He said the way those older cars were built is actually his preference. He said it is for sale, but the price just went up.
So there's Bargwanna having pulled out of that group, and he's needed fuel, you remember.
Oh, and he's down there. He's down the inside.
At turn 5, remember he made that critical move earlier in the race. He does it again, but he fishtails on the exit. Now Todd Kelly has something visual. He can now see a car in front of him. That's got to be something for Todd. This is going to end in disaster. Will it? Somehow they hold on. They're battling for a podium position, and Todd Kelly gets the spot back. Great racing.
Well done, Todd Kelly. Very, very good. Did the crisscross, fought for track position all the way down to turn 6, and maintained his position after getting back on the inside at the next corner. Great racing from these two guys.
So Mark Larkham said earlier that Bargwanna was going to struggle for fuel, and that was the case. They basically, even with that extra safety car assistance, just didn't have enough fuel to get home.
So this is it, the final lap, 3.4 Ks. The rain's not going to let up. The opposition's not going to let up, depending on who you're after. Rick Kelly leads Craig Lowndes. Big gap back to 3rd. Todd Kelly, he's already had one fight against Winterbottom. Remember, Todd's got no wiper.
Got to give him 10 out of 10 for fighting for his corner, though, up at the top of the circuit in that previous lap. That was a great exchange.
These two guys have both won a championship before at the front. Rick Kelly and Craig Lowndes have both done Bathurst victories. So too has Todd Kelly, for that matter. But this will mean a lot more, especially for the Kelly brothers. In Rick's case, it'll be his first race win since 2008. And his first one here on New Zealand soil.
Oh, it's on still for 3rd and 4th here. Winterbottom was very aggressive through the chicane. He triggered the electronic loop down there. Look at this. This is 6 against the sun. Margin from 1st to 2nd now looks a little more relaxed.
Around turn 8, he's held on. He's done it. Go all the way back to the first lap when Rick Kelly made that critical move at the start. That's where he took the advantage. And for the first time, Kelly Brothers Racing will salute the checkered flag.
Well done. Great drive, Rick Kelly.
Yeah, good guys. Good job, guys.
Emerging from the clouds. And Todd Kelly, in an extraordinary drive, holds on for 3rd spot. There'll be some kind of party thrown by the Kelly boys tonight. And Craig Lowndes pulls up alongside Rick. to, I reckon, acknowledge a stellar drive. A very good tactical drive, a gutsy start. He fought it out in between, and this crowd, well, I haven't seen a Kiwi driver win, but they're acknowledging some pretty awesome racing.
Rick Kelly engaged through the week to Alicia. There she is right there in the foreground. And what a way for Rick Kelly to get his first win in these conditions. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's exactly it. He was the one that managed to master all the conditions, the dry and the wet. And it's great to hear Rick Kelly with that celebratory voice back on against Craig Lowndes in second, Todd Kelly there in third. Mark Winterbottom ends up just a spot away, and a good rescue job too from James Courtney to get back inside the top 5. Remember, points are so critical, especially at this stage of the season, because Jamie Whincup was starting to pull away from James Courtney on the championship ladder. Garth Tander there in 18th position. Jason Bright in 19th. So Shane Van Gisbergen finished mid-pack, and there is Jamie Whincup, championship leader, 23rd spot. Tim Slade, Webb, Warren Luff didn't make it to the finish, and Paul Dumbrell didn't make it to the start. What a day. What a day. And Todd's in a hurry now to get up alongside his brother and celebrate this one. They took on an enormous amount when they decided to take over the team. They've got 4 cars in this team. They've created it from the ground up. And in the old car, Rick has gone back to his old winning ways. He's now clocked up his 10th race win. He won the championship through consistency. He won this day through tactical nous and just rock solid, hard racing.
Look at the response, Matt. All the team out there. It's a fantastic reaction, isn't it? And a well-deserved win. Great calculation, but also a really heady drive. Those conditions are as tough as they ever get, and a very mature drive from Rick Kelly.
Engaged to Alicia, as you said, throughout the week, so Rick's got a double celebration. And the battle-weary now come back into pit lane.
Yeah, look at them.
They'll wring themselves out tonight. And then just like we did at Adelaide, they dust themselves off and come back again tomorrow. So that's only half of the ITM 400 picture. And there's a wonderful picture.
How good is that? He will be absolutely exhausted after that race, physically and mentally, and his brother comes up. That's a fantastic reaction for 2 really good young men who have tried very hard to get these cars to the front of the field.
Brothers in arms, now on the podium at the ITM 400.
Rick, Todd, congratulations. Rick, you told me early in the day you were nervous about today. You had no reason to be. That was magnificent.
Thanks, mate. It's painful when you're in front. There's so many laps to go. I couldn't believe it when they're like, oh, it's so many laps, like 10 laps. I'm like, no. And then the safety car come out, but I'm stoked. I mean, the whole team deserves this. They've worked so hard trying to get the other car fixed, and the old girl's back up the front. One last time with Todd in Simmons Plains in the wet, and he did it again, so I'm just stoked for the whole team.
Todd, that is an historic day for Kelly Brothers Racing. Congratulations.
Yeah, that was awesome. It was nearly a Jack Daniels 1-2 there for a while if that safety car didn't come out, but really, really happy to end up where we did. I had no wiper for about the last 20 laps and just could not see a thing on that restart, so it was good to bring it home in one piece.
Boy, that was hard work out there with no wiper.
Oh, yeah, you couldn't wish anything worse out there, but it was good to get it back.
And a great day too for Craig Lowndes for Team Vodafone. He fought his way into second spot there. Lowndesy just around here. Craig, congratulations. Boy, that was tough work.
Well, it was, Brett. It's we had a good race. Like, we had a good car. We made a few little mistakes. I made a mistake in pit lane. I come in on the slicks, slid past where I was supposed to stop. It was like, boys. So, but look, it was great. Obviously, haven't had such a good run here in the past. It's nice to be on the podium.
And you kept the heat on Rick as well?
Yeah, look, we had pace to be able to keep with him. I don't think we had the pace to get by him. And he did a fantastic job, and it's a credit to him and his boys. I think they'll be pretty proud of it.
They will be. They'll celebrate. And you too, Lowndesy, when you get up top there. Enjoy the podium.
Yeah, thanks, Brett.